So I wanted to give my take on what I think is perhaps the defining geopolitical issue of the age, which is the war in Ukraine. The disastrous approach, I think, that the Trump administration is taking, disastrous for the world, disastrous even for the American national interest, but also the context that has got us here and the sheer cowardice of politicians in Europe to make the right judgments, not just since the war has started, but over the last decade and a half. I think at the outset it's worth having real moral clarity over the barbarism that is being perpetrated right now by Russia on a sovereign state, Ukraine, in Europe. Because we know that Russian soldiers have been engaged in mutilation and torture of Ukrainian troops. We know that there has been the mass kidnap of children. These are tremendously disturbing atrocities. And I think we just need to be completely clear that there is no moral equivalence here. Russia, the aggressor, with a tyrant as a leader, non-democratic, autocratic, shading towards totalitarianism, wishes to recreate the Russian Empire, and Ukraine is a victim. However, if they take Ukraine, that won't be the end of it. Where will then that leave the states in the Baltics? Where will it leave Poland? We've got to say very clearly that there is no moral equivalence between the two parties to this war. Russia is the evil actor in this terrible atrocity.
Is the next ready to give up Crimea, do you think, Mr. President? Oh, I think so, yeah.
I think that the way that the Trump administration is playing this is bad for the world, but is also bad for the American national interest. Because what Trump has done with the deal that has been outlined is allow Putin to have sovereignty over Crimea, which Russia invaded in 2014, to bank the land that it has already taken illegally and appallingly, to have the sanctions diluted or removed so that they can trade more effectively on the world stage. What kind of a signal does that send to tyrants and dictators around the world? What does it mean for China's aspiration to seize Taiwan? There has at least been, since the Second World War, a tenuous understanding that the sovereignty of nation states is sacrosanct, and in doing what Trump is doing, he's jeopardizing the culture, the psychology, and normalizing, I think, in the minds of people around the world, that if people have the power to take, they should go ahead and take what they want.
We will keep the military aid flowing and keep increasing the economic pressure on Russia to strengthen Ukraine now.
For me, one of the great tragedies of this is watching European leaders point the finger and say this is a terrible thing, what we're doing to Ukraine. And yet where were the Western leaders, the European leaders in 2014 when Russia annexed Crimea? Why did we not stand up to that? Where was the defence spending to send a signal to Putin that we were serious about protecting borders? It's atrophied with successive conservative governments and governments across the NATO members outside the United States. Why was the Conservative Party taking money from Russian donors in a way that I think has corrupted the way that it thought about Russia and the actions that it was taking under Putin? And even since the invasion, we have failed to properly enforce the sanctions upon Russia. They've been completely porous, almost absurd in some respects. And the thing that worries me most of all is even with Trump seeming to withdraw the protection of America, that nuclear umbrella, even with what we're seeing about the aggressive intentions of Putin, we're still not stepping up on defence. Keir Starmer has announced an increase in defence spending from 2.3 to 2.5% of GDP over time. That is not a serious response to where we are in the world, and I think it corroborates and bolsters the idea in Beijing, in Moscow, in Pyongyang, in Tehran, in these nations that want to rip up the liberal world order that has done so much for the world, that the West, particularly in Europe, is weak and not prepared to back up its intentions with the necessary action. What seems clear to me is the world is inching towards a potential global war. It's often been said that the Second World War just happened to be 3 or 4 conflicts that happened simultaneously in different regional theatres. We have war in Europe, we have war in the Middle East, Israel and Gaza. Iran has been involved in that. And we could very soon have war in China, if China invades or puts a blockade on Taiwan. We're living in a much more dangerous world, and I think we need to have, without wanting to make people feel scared, we have to have some clarity on that if we're going to do the right things politically.